Alright, I have my sketch laid out, and this is just on Sketchpad. I'm not doing the watercolor part yet. I will go to the watercolor paper and paint once I've laid out how I want my composition and colors. These are Progresso. They're woodless colored pencils. They're super nice to use. And I'm just going to go through and pick out some of the colors. You want to usually try to do like a harmonious color combination. I tend to do a lot of different shades of blues and purples. And then of course with the stems there'll be greens and blues in there. So with the foreground and like the center of the daisy, you'll want to do a yellowish green, and that brings it forward to your eye. And that can be also in these ones back here, the stems, although you don't want those so much to be the focal point, so you want to blue out some of that green. And when you look at daisies, there really is a lot of bluish green in their leaves and stems. And so underneath in the shadow part, under the petals, it's going to be a bluer, deeper green. And I know that traditionally, like the way the teachers tried to teach me was you do the background first with watercolors, but I never liked that because you lose your white. And so I generally start with the focal point, and when I know that's going to come out the way I want it, then I'll work the background in around it. And so that's two shades of green. I have a yellow green and basically a true green, and then now I'm going to put in a bluer green. And I'll probably come back even with a third darker green too. And so this is another thing I like to do. I generally like the light coming from the left, so your shadowy, deeper colors, bluer colors, are going to be on the right, and your yellower, brighter colors, the warmer colors, are going to be on the left. So you can start to see, even at this point, I only have just a few colors in there, and you already start to see some of the dimension. And I think I might even want to put a little more yellow right here in this spot, because I almost like to think of that as being part of the focus. The white will be the brightest, so that will really take your eye. So I'm going to take this kind of a grayish purple, would you call it, and I'm just going to kind of scribble in my block of colors, starting with that. And those will tend to fade to the background and give you more dimension. Whereas this brighter one, you can put up here and have more light. It'll be a little bit brighter. And then start layering in your different shades of blues. And if you want other flowers in there, you want to introduce those before you block them out in the background. At this point, I'm just laying in some colors. And you can see now too that the white will start to stand out a little bit more. And as you get to the corners and edges, do an even deeper blue, and that will define your edges almost like a frame. And it almost trains your eye to where the focal point is. And by going sideways with my colored pencils like this, with these woodless ones, they're pretty soft and you'll lose your point pretty quick. And so when you're just blocking in like this, it's really good. You can just kind of keep turning it as you go, and that'll almost keep you a nice point on there. And you don't have to put a lot of pressure. These are fairly soft, so if you do use a lot of pressure, you will probably end up breaking it. I'm not doing anything highly defined. I'm just laying out how I want the colors. And I may decide when I do go to the watercolor paper that I'll put in some other flowers. At this point, I just wanted it to be like this. And you can do the lighter blues where you want it to be a lighter point. Maybe there's more light over here on this side since it's coming from that direction. And you can go in with a little bit more of a point to define those petals. And because it's blue, it will tend to fade to the background and let your flower and stem stand out more. And so at this point, if you want to make any changes, you can do that before you get into your painting. With watercolor, it's not as easy as acrylics or oils to change something. It can be done, but it's not quite the same as it would be with acrylics and oils. And the other thing is there's a lot of texture here. Because of the way I've laid it in, you can come back and rub with a paper towel or a cloth and start to knock back some of that texture so it's not competing with your subject. And in that finer area, you can use a stomp so you're not losing the subject texture and blending those colors in too much. But don't be too hard on yourself. It's just something to do. It's simple, easy, no pressure. It doesn't need to be perfect. And this is a nice little stomp here. that has a good point on it, so I can go in here and really define these edges. Rub out some of that texturing, which also ends up filling in more of the white on the paper, so it's not competing with your focus of the white petals on the flowers. So this is pretty light here. So one trick when you have a lighter point is to put in something darker for contrast. You don't want it to be too dark, because at some point the darkness will draw your eye more. It'll be so strong. It's a little easier with the blues. They're not quite so forward to your eye. But did you see how that changed it? That made the white petals stand out even more by putting in that darker. And then you can just soften up some of that texture and lines and come in with some of this, different shades of blue. And just have fun. Just enjoy it. And for continuity, you can do the same color across several areas, and it'll look like it all goes together.